Tirana is the bustling and relatively modernized capital of Albania. It is the most important economic, financial, political, and trade center in the country. The city was announced as the European Youth Capital for 2022. Tourists often find the city charming, with both cosmopolitan and small-town feelings and a lively nightlife. Tirana lies 17 miles 27 kilometers east of the Adriatic Sea coast and along the Ishem River at the end of a fertile plain. It was founded in the early 17th century by a Turkish general Barkinzade Süleyman Pasha, who is said to have built a mosque, a bathhouse, and a bakery in order to attract settlement. The town gradually became a trading center at the junction of roads and caravan trails. It was chosen to be the capital of Albania in 1920 by a congress at Lushne under King Zog I. Reign 1928 to 1939. Italian architects were employed to replan the city. The focus is Skanderberg Square, whose Etiham Bey Mosque is now flanked by the Soviet-built Palace of Culture. Nearby is the University of Tirana, 1957. The old city stretches to the east and north of the main square and features alley houses and historic architecture. Tirana has museums, a National Institute of Folklore, a National Theater, and a concert hall. Skanderberg Square has a large statue of Skanderberg, the Albanian national hero. The inhabitants of Tirana are mostly Muslim. Albania spent the majority of the last 50 years under a strict and isolationist dictator, Enver Hoxha. Upon his death, the country moved towards a free market economic model with fixed results. Presently, Tirana is where the old and new Albania meet. Unpaved streets host brand new Land Rovers. iPhone-toting youngsters rub shoulders with street vendors peddling all manners of items, and gleaming glass towers look down on abandoned construction projects. Tourists usually find Tirana a beautiful and charming city with cosmopolitan and small-town feeling are intertwined with a lively nightlife. However, Tirana suffers from pollution problems, mainly due to the rapid increase in cars in the city and continuous construction. Long gone are the days when Tirana used to be subject to power outages almost daily, and this made Tirana a noisy city as the lack of power and lack of traffic lights had cars navigating by honking their horns. Today, the situation has dramatically improved regarding power outages. Tirana is undergoing a major renovation from its communist days. Many of the ugly, dull buildings have been repainted, but a lot of work still needs to be done. English is rapidly gaining steam as the second language of the city with the youth, but many older residents also speak Italian. Albanians are very hospitable towards foreigners, despite media frequently portraying them as thieves and mobsters. Tirana itself is very approachable. If you're the adventurous type, crime is rare. The worst experience you may have is with erratic driving style of Albanians. Without further ado, let us discuss the most interesting tourist attractions in Tirana, Albania. Start with the Pyramid of Tirana. The Pyramid of Tirana is a structure and former museum located in Tirana. It is opened as a museum in 1988 and became a conference center in 1991. Following the collapse of communism during the 1997 Kosovo War, the building was used as a NATO base. In 2018, a new project was unveiled that would turn the pyramid into a youth IT center for creative technologies with a focus on computer programming, robotics, and startups under the name of Tumu Center of Tirana. The renovated structure, transformed by MBRDV, was opened to the public in May 2023. Bank R2, from nuclear shelter to Museum of Memory. This underground labyrinth in the heart of the capital hides a dark past. An excellent reimagining of a communist-era nuclear bunker, Bank R2 Museum and Art Space, reflects Tirana's initiative to use culture to celebrate the birth of a new era whilst remembering its solemn past. The unearthing of the underground tunnel in the center of Tirana echoes the uncovering of ancient ruins in any of the world's most fascinating historical cities. Each discovery lets the breaths new life into the city, recalling times past, marking the end of one era and the beginning of a new. Bank R2, at approximately 1,000 square meters in size, is the second of two nuclear bunkers in Tirana that has recently transformed into an interactive artistic space. Located in the main block of ministerial buildings in the city center, the underground shelter was hidden from the public eye until its recent unveiling in 2015. Secretly built from 1981 to 1986 beneath the Ministry of Internal Affairs along the city's main boulevard, the underground structure was given the code name Objecta Styli, Object Pole, in order to keep its construction undetected. The structure was held as a great accomplishment by the communist regime, which speaks volume of their overwhelming and ultimately unnecessary focus on the protection and isolation of the country from imperial powers. In fact, the tunnel represents one of the last installments of Enver Hoxha's paranoid bunker project in Albania during the 1970s. The movement involved the creation of more than 700,000 bunkers across the country and an even larger underground tunnel at the edge of the capital, which is now the Bank Art-1. During the construction of Bank Art-2, its dome, which marks the entrance to the museum, was damaged by groups who saw it as a glorification of the dictatorship. The decision was made not to repair the damage, and in so doing, cemented its place as part of Albania's historical memory. The journey through this tunnel unmasked the pathological isolation and paranoia of the long 45-year period. Each of its 24 rooms recounts stories of the political persecutions of approximately 100,000 Albanians from 1945 to 1991, the creation of the State Security of Sigurimi during communism, and exhibition showing the state's means of persecution during this dark period of history. For an even more depth look at these methods, you can also visit the House of Leaves Museum. The journey nicely concludes on the boulevard facing the setting sun, after symbolizing the idea that all tyrannical regimes eventually end. In the ancient world and ours, in Albania, it is precisely the reimagining of the space like bank art that signifies the birth of a new era. For almost 50 years, Albania was so hermetically sealed under the communist dictatorship of Enver Hoxha that it was named the Little North Korea of Europe. Between 1945 and 1991, at least 6,000 people are believed to have been executed, and nearly 100,000 Albanians were interned in gulag-style labor camps. Today, nearly 30 years in Albania and its capital Tirana are gradually emerging from their isolation, but victims of the dictatorship are still demanding justice. Enver Hoxha, the lunatic who took over the asylum. The Iron Fist of Albania tells the extraordinary story of how one man held an entire country hostage for 40 years and got away with it. Between 1944-1985, the small Balkan nation of Albania was ruled by a strange, sociopathic, and frankly completely mad dictator by the name of Enver Hoxha. While Stalinism effectively ended in Europe with the death of its namesake, or at least with the Khrushchev reforms that followed, it continued unabated and unquestioned in Albania until 1990. When Hoxha died in 1985, Albania was officially the third poorest country in the world, with a GNP of a small town and an average income of $15 a month. 4 decades of collectivization had led to near starvation in the countryside, where Hoxha's aggressive isolationism meant people were still using farming technology from the 1920s. When the regime finally collapsed a few years later after Hoxha's death, it left behind a tired, hungry, confused, and fearful population. Skanderberg Square, the main attraction of Tirana. The main Tirana travel attraction is Skanderberg Square in the very heart of the city, named after the national hero of Albania. Normally, it's a lovely green space with the statue of Skanderberg in the middle and important buildings around, such as the Palace of Culture or National Historical Museum, with a famous mosaic at the building front. Colorful Tirana. Tirana is probably the most colorful capital in Europe. On a sunny day like I had, I was really overwhelmed in colors all around me. A couple of years ago, the mayor of Tirana, Edi Rama, who is also an artist and a painter, has decided to put some more life in the capital, and he did so by giving it more colors. So Tirana, Albania's colorful capital that was once a communist wasteland. Up until 1992, Albania was ruled under a merciless communist regime. But in 2000, the mayor of nation's capital launched a city-wide beautification program to stunning results. The Cathedral of the Resurrection of Christ is the Albanian Orthodox Cathedral in Tirana. It is the third largest Orthodox church in Europe. About this building, the original building was built in 1865 on the present Skanderberg Square, and it was closed for worship in 1967 during the communist period. During these years, the old cathedral was completely destroyed by the communist regime, and the Hotel International Tirana was built in its place. In 2012, after about 10 years of work, the new cathedral was completed. Tambay Mosque. To one side of the Skanderberg, the 1789 to 1823 Etenbey Mosque was spared destruction during the atheism campaign of the late 1960s because of its status as a cultural monument. Small and elegant, it's one of the oldest buildings left in the city. Rising gracefully amid Tirana's jumbled architectural layers, the creamy stone walls of Etenbey Mosque relate Albania's remarkable endurance through rare creative relics recently revived from state suppression. An 18th century icon whose very existence narrates themes of Albanian identity, more than merely Tirana's most beautiful preserved relic of 500 years of Ottoman rule, this spiritual sanctuary tells of the country's extraordinary endurance against swirling tides of change through its very structure. The Tirana mosaic is a famous Albanian landmark thought to have been part of a Roman villa of the 3rd century. It is the oldest known object of Tirana and decorated the basement of the villa. In the 5th and 6th centuries, a church was built on the site. The ruins of this Paleo-Christian basilica were discovered in 1972. The mosaic was declared a cultural monument in 1973. Today, the Byzantine Church displays some of the ancient mosaics discovered at the site that features diverse geometrical patterns as well as poultry and fish. The site was reopened for the public on 23rd of January 2010. It is also known as the Mosaic of St. George's Church. Is Albania cheap? It's incredibly cheap. Albania sure does provide amazing value for money, being easily one of the cheapest countries in Europe. Is Albania expensive to visit? Albania is not expensive to visit. Compared to other European countries, Albania is a cheap holiday destination. The average daily travel costs are 42 euro per person per day. A double room in a hotel costs only 25 to 40 euro. A cheap meal is 2 to 4 euro, or a local restaurant costs 4 to 10 euro. A museum ticket is 1 to 4 euro.